Yep.
Looks like. That will be something that will continue to evolve and I think provide some better forecasting of debt within the current year over the quarters, but that information is good for the first time for this.
Thank you. I noted that, and congratulations on bringing it in under budget. That's a good effort. Thanks for that. Can I have a mover, please? Second. All in favour? Carried. Next agenda item is Ara Tupu update. Is here or Marley? She's on her way down. Should we wait or should we move to the next agenda item? Okay. Thank you. Then you.
No, back to me.
So we'll get it. We'll move back to number 6 later, and number 7 is the financial performance monitoring forecast as at 30 September.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, as it says in the title, the financial performance monitoring and forecast for the first quarter of this financial year. I would note, we've called it out in terms of in the report, that there is still work to be done around the budgets that we're reporting against to ensure that those are phased appropriately over the course of the year. This is the first set of reporting that we've pulled out from our new financial system, so there is still some of those tidy ups and housekeeping matters to attend to, which the staff are on at the moment. Overall, though, for the first quarter, we are operating in a favourable position, so about 2.9 million favourable to forecast after allowing for reserve transfers. We've noted that the revenue is unfavourable by about 6.6 million. Our investment fund returns are obviously contributing to that, but also just noting the new financial system for our accounts receivable or billing activities only went live from September 2023. And so there is the need to catch up with those activities as well. In terms of construction, and the infrastructure program, as would be expected, the main construction season only commences October, and so for the first quarter of the year we're not seeing significant costs coming through there. For that first quarter, we have taken an exceptions-based approach to a forecast, with a more detailed or a full forecast to be undertaken at the end of the second quarter. So we have identified a handful of more significant shifts that are required to be noted. First one of those being recognition of the transfer from regional disaster recovery reserves to zone operating reserves for costs associated with flood response events or flood response. That had been approved by the Integrated Catchment Management Committee earlier this year. There's a request for 340,000 of funding towards the Hamilton Waikato Metro Spatial Plan. So that's part of a joined up program with other future-proof partners. Total program value of $2.25 million for this year, with the key areas of focus identified there. And then the final point from an operating expenditure perspective, that is that as a member of New Zealand Mutual Liability Risk Pool, Council has been advised of a call of funds of just under 188,000 for claims that have been successfully made against that cooperative, I guess. It's a mutual fund for previous financial years, particularly in relation to the Supreme Court case in relation to the Napier Waterfront Apartments claim. We note there some capital expenditure carryovers, predominantly within the Lower Waikato zone, so signalling work that was budgeted for this year that will now be deferred until the 24-25 year. And then offsetting that, the bringing forward of $700,000 of funding for the Pangarehu Canal project. Information was requested from the committee in terms of visibility of the depreciation expense versus capital expense across the infrastructure activities. Concern noted around that cross-subsidisation of costs between catchment zones. So there was conversation that was raised following the asset revaluation that was completed based on values as at 31st of December 2022. So you can see there we're disclosing the infrastructure expenditure versus the depreciation year to date, and as noted, that picture will probably become more useful as we work through into the main construction season where we start to see those costs coming through. Mr. Chair, those are probably the key points from me to highlight, but happy to take any questions from members.
Thanks, Janine. Mikhail, have you got questions for
Chairman? Janine, just on the 2.14, how much have we got in the regional disaster recovery reserve, and how much does that get topped up yearly, or how much does that go in there yearly?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I should have that figure at the tip of my tongue. I think after these reserve transfers, we still have something like $4 to $5 million in those reserves. The way that they get topped up is effectively an extra 3% on top of the zone rates, and that gets split between the regional disaster recovery reserve and the zone disaster recovery reserves as well. So depending on the severity of the event, depends on whether funding can be drawn from the regional disaster reserve or whether it can be managed within the zone reserves.
Okay, and also the 340,000 going into the Metro PT or the future proof. What was that last year or the year before? Was that just 3 yearly? What is that? Is it increased? I mean,
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that. This is one I want to say that this is new expenditure. It was not included in the long-term plan, so there hasn't been any ongoing provision for it, but it is part of that overall future-proof partnership with that work identified as a priority.
So the 340s come from a request from the future-proof committee?
Yes, yeah.
Stu, question?
Just that question of Mikhail's was a good one, with disaster reserves, and we had this discussion in ICM when we did the approvals the other day, but in my mind, we should always know what they are, so annually you have those graphs.
Yep.
But I just wonder whether we want to start following the usage of them a bit more. That's probably not the right wording, because my gut feeling is with weather changes, they're going to go up.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure at what point what we used to call an unexpected event becomes a normal event, and it's funded not by disaster reserve, but if you know what I mean. But and I don't know the answers, but to me that's something that ICM should be really watching here.
Yes, and so through you, Mr. Chair, I totally agree. I think this is part of our long-term plan conversations. And while there's not an answer here and now, it is something that I think through the financial strategy, we need to be signalling around what our provisions around that flood response actually look like. Are these disaster recovery reserves the right mechanism, or is there another way that we should be doing that? What are some alternative self-insurance mechanisms? There are different products that are coming to market. And I think we need to be thinking a bit more holistically around how we actually address our costs in this space, but also, I guess, the key theme of resilience for our communities as well, and where we need to be operating.
No, agreed. The other thing I noticed driving around the King Country, there's a lot of rivers next to roads, public roads, and they're getting dangerously blooming close. And I actually think there's a case for, we need to be working, we do work close with the district council, but probably front foot that a bit. It tends to have been a bit reactive in the past. And I also think that district councils probably need to take a harder line on some landowners that often do a bit of earthworks quite close to the road and effectively encourage erosion that wouldn't have otherwise happened as well, and the ratepayer ends up blooming paying for it. So yeah.
Thanks, yeah. Janine, just as a matter of interest, I noticed on the regional transport connections that were 150,000 budget to her your rolling stock. And I guess raising the question of, in relation to what we know is likely to happen in the future, what sort of constraint do we have, controls over expenditure on assets which are unlikely to be part of the long-term process of council responsibilities?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that 150,000 is probably associated with building a detailed business case for the potential procurement of that rolling stock, to be able to piggyback off the Greater Wellington Regional Council process at the moment. So I think it's probably the question, and sort of started some conversations this morning in terms of, obviously, with a new government now agreed, and some clarity around coalition agreements, while not detailed work programs underneath that or legislation. I think there is a need for us to look at both our long-term plan budget, which was the conversation that we had this morning, but also to be looking into our business, our business as usual activities, to identify areas where we either want to at least slow down or stop. And obviously we haven't, so from a staff perspective, we haven't done that yet. But I understand the appetite from council to do that. And I think that's the right thing for us to be doing, of just running the ruler over all of these activities.
Okay, thank you. So just for the record, how do we put a process in place to get some reporting back on that? Is that appropriate here, or should that be sort of council?
Through you, Mr. I think it's probably through full council.
Okay.
We obviously have the 13th of December as a workshop date that's set aside, which was for staff to bring back the proposed long-term plan. I guess that's the time and space that my mind is turning to in terms of what conversation are we bringing back. Obviously, significant work has gone in by staff to date to try and shape a proposed long-term plan. But there's probably some different conversations that we need to get on the table as well, and whether that provides an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to signal that I would like to think that this sort of expenditure is on hold until we have that discussion at council. Okay. Thank you, Janine. If there's no further questions, there's a resolution that we have which is up there on the board. Could I have a mover for that, please? No changes required. So thanks, Stu. Second it. Nobody wants to second it? Oh, thank you. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Right. We can move back to agenda item number 6. And Emma's now in the room. Hello. Welcome, Emma. You're allowed to sit at the end of the table. And thank you. Great.
Oh, no, you're fine. We're just.
I'm sure Janine will action the stop work meeting on that. Thank you. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks.
The floor is yours.
So this is the update on the performance of the Te Ara Tupu dashboard, along with a couple of the sort of activities that have been going on in the excellence and innovation space. We will quickly have a look at the culture area. If we click on the details for culture. So I did outline in the report just kind of an overall look at our performance in the culture area. We have currently 8 of our measures are on track. And you'll see there that even with some of our off-track measures, we're still tracking in the right direction. We're just not quite at that target yet. And those are this is pretty consistent. It's our annual leave balances. And time to fill vacancies. So that's been consistently off track since the dashboard went up. One of our new measures that's dropped off into the off track space is the absenteeism rate. And this is generally to be expected because we've just come out of a winter period with a lot of people having sick leave, etc. So I'm not too worried about the performance in this area, in the culture space. Most things are tracking upwards, which is good to see. Was there any questions or anything you wanted to look at a little bit more closely in the culture measures before we move on to customer?
All fine on that, thanks.
Happy with that? We'll just move to the detailed look of customer. So in our customer space, we do have a couple of new measures added since we last looked at these. And one of those is our digital channels feedback. We always knew this was going to be a hard thing to add in because it's generally not going to be on track, because when people send in feedback when they're online, it's generally because something's not working for them. But we did think it was a really good way for us to get feedback from our customers and give us insights on how to improve, which in the report we outlined a couple of the ways that the comms team have actually been taking that feedback that's been coming through and improving on it. So you will see that it is very off track, digital channels. It's yeah, we're in the negative there. We're negative 40.9, but we're not going to let that sort of deter us from keeping it as a measure, because we're finding the feedback really useful and improving the experience for our customers. And in other areas, again, like our iris response rate, again, it's in the sort of the one to watch. It's not quite on track, but it's not off track either. And it is tracking upwards in the right direction. So we've had our SPY teams do a little bit of work around how they are responding to their customers and their iris requests that are coming through, and they've actually managed to sort of streamline a few of those processes, which saw our spy team work with our customer service team to get that done. And there's a bit of a story around that in the innovation portal piece later on in the report.
Can I just ask if you're expecting the digital channels to be a continuing negative?
Yes.
Is there a lot of point in us continuing to monitor it? Because all it's going to do is tell us what we already know. And you're absolutely correct. It's only going to be the people that have got a beef with council who are going to go on there.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, we could remove it, but it is sort of that one place where we can go to see how we're doing in that space. And we do want to see that if the changes we are making are having an effect, potentially decreasing those numbers of negative feedback. So yeah, it is a hard one, and potentially if it just keeps going down and down and down despite the efforts we're putting in, then perhaps that is something we might look at removing. But at this stage, it's only been in there about less than 3 months, so we are, or couple of months, so we are just wanting to see how it goes for a bit longer, and if the changes we're making are having an effect on that performance measure.
I can understand that if you're responding to the complaints and it does make a difference, then absolutely stick with it. But if it's just a place for people to vent their frustrations and angers, then I can't see the point in us being punished for other people's problems. But that's
a fair point. I think it's that the sort of word picture that comes along with the rating that is probably the most important part to us, because that tells us sort of what's going on a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question?
Stu, yeah. Stu.
Do you want to go first? No, it was just on that one. Look, I really appreciate you being upfront and honest about that, and I'm with Chris. I think we probably need to run it for a bit longer to make sure we are getting the feedback to improve on it. But if at a point it becomes, as Chris said, just a opportunity to bag us, and we'll have to make another decision. But probably for that at the moment, would be more clear. Thank you.
Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I want to ask is the 40 mark is what? What is it actually, what does it relate to? Is it 40% of people that are inquiring are pissed off, or?
It's MPS rating. So they rate us, they have a little feedback box and they can rate us on that. And then I don't know the exact details of how it's worked out, but there's detractors, promoters, and then just people in the middle. And I think when we have more people detracting, we sort of go down into that negative space. And when it sits in the 0, that's people don't really have an opinion. And then there's the positives that should bring us back up. But it is actually quite hard with MPS to stay up in the positive space.
But is it just people complaining, or is it people that are interacting that have had issues with us?
Yes, so
that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it generally is people that have had an experience. They're either looking to pay their rates online, or they're looking for some information and perhaps they're not finding it. So then they're just hitting that, give us feedback, and they're identifying their issue.
There's way too many variables in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, and I've I've been subjected to a little bit of that myself, and it's understandable. People do get frustrated when they can't use the system, and that's just life. Not everybody's like you, Rob. You're very familiar with using a computer. So look, we're not going to change that. That's just human nature.
Yeah. It is also, I haven't checked for this month, but we also look at the number of feedback as well. So if we're only getting 2 in the month negative feedbacks, that's actually quite good. So we sort of temper what we're getting with that information as well.
questions?
Our next area is Te Ao Māori, and I will get Marley to jump in and have a little chat about that performance area.
Go for it, yeah.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this morning. Kia ora, councillors, and also kia ora, Emma, for putting together the update this time around for Te Ara Tupu. And obviously there's a bit of a focus this reporting round on the Te Ao Māori measure. As is outlined within the report itself, some positive progress has been made in relation to the measures. Previously, when the dashboard was reported, it showed that out of the 10 measures, 4 were on track, 1 was being monitored and 5 were on track. This time round, there has been a slight improvement in that we are now 4 on track, 2 monitored and 4 off track. The measure that has moved from off track to monitor relates to staff completing mātauranga Māori modules. And I guess seeing an increase in the number of staff taking up that opportunity. We do measure the uptake of staff on all of our learning and development modules and wānanga and workshops, and so we'll continue to report on how well the uptake has been, I guess, progressing. The measures that continue to be off track relate to our performance against our joint management agreements and also the co-managed lands agreement that we have with Waikato Tainui. Having a closer look at the obligations and how well we're tracking, it shows that actually the only joint management agreement that we are meeting our target with is Waikato Tainui. The target is set at 85%, and 85% is reflective of the fact that there are a number of obligations within each of our agreements that haven't actually been triggered. For example, in the Taupo area, we have not yet had any resource consent applications that have triggered a hearing. And so that particular obligation continues to be rated as not yet commenced. When having a closer look at the joint management agreements and getting, I guess, a sense of why we might not be meeting our targets, we did take a closer look at our joint management agreement with Tū Whare Tō Māori Trust Board, because we're currently going through the process of reviewing that joint management agreement. And in doing so, the key reasons for not meeting our obligations relate to what I've just discussed, the fact that some of our obligations haven't actually yet been triggered, but also the lack of resourcing and capacity to be able to deliver on some of these obligations. Not just from, well, particularly driven from Tū Whare Tō Māori Trust Board and, you know, their ability to pick up on some of these obligations. In the coming year, we do hope to take a closer look at our other agreements because they too are due for review. But I'll leave it there and take any questions.
Thanks, Marty. Can I Just for clarification so that I understand, from what you're saying, it seems like the reasons for the, if you like, non-compliance is not because of an activity or an action by the regional council people, the people that are engaging in these JMAs, but more because there's no need to engage, or alternatively that the iwi partners in those JMAs are choosing not to engage. Is that a fair summation or not?
We have only taken the closer look at one of our agreements so far with Te Whare Toa Māori Trust Board, and that's certainly the key reasons that have been identified. And we do focus on, I guess, making sure that our own staff are aware of the obligations that we have to our iwi partners under the agreements, to make sure that there is ownership and responsibility in terms of carrying forward any progress that is required. So when we do come to reviewing the remaining agreements, potentially we will see the same outcomes, but until we take that closer look at the other agreements, then I couldn't confidently say exactly what's driving them.
I was just going to suggest that maybe it's the agreement which is too onerous, and that it's not reflective of what people actually need in terms of the outcomes. So maybe that's the place to go back to and make them more fit for purpose, if you like. Did you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, similar vein, Marley. I guess the thing that strikes me is that neither party are necessarily doing anything wrong. It's what we're trying to measure. And if I think of the number of JMAs that I've attended where they almost seem a little bit clinical / operational rather than aspirational, if that makes sense. And to me, there's a lot of opportunity for both parties. Both parties have aspirations, but for whatever reason, and time commitments is no doubt a big part of it. We're getting a little bit bogged down. So I just want to make sure that this process is delivering results that help us improve, and our iwi partners improve as well. So that would be my feedback here, that we have a bit of a think about what it is we're reporting on here to make it value add. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. We have those discussions all the time, and how do we more value out of these meetings rather than just something we turn up to, and particularly from our perspective, often doing a lot of reporting, and I've heard these reports till I'm blue in the face, but I've got to hear them again, sort of thing,
Thanks, Stu. Yeah, look, there's not insubstantial cost associated with these things, and what they are, but we need to make sure that they are fit for. I think that's the point I'm taking from this conversation.
But my understanding is we don't necessarily need to change the agreements because they do provide quite a bit of latitude, don't they? Because going back and amending them is quite a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, I think I'm on two. I know I'm on Rakawa and Napa. And Rakawa still hasn't had a meeting in 12 months. So it's a bit hard to know what anyone wants when you don't actually have the meetings too. So, I had a discussion when I was down with Napa with, I think, the co-chair last time, and I said, it was actually interesting. I really struggle if anyone really knows what they want to accomplish out of it. And I said, what's your, what as a councillor here sitting here, what would you like me to help you get done? And it was sort of on the policies and stuff and that regional councils do, and it's fine. I went, but well, then what do you want me to come down to here to sign this off for? Because we're just travelling down to bring the policy of regional council down, and that's all we seem to accomplish while we're there. It's, as Stu said, it's not inspirational. It's just click the ticket and it's done, and we leave the room again. I don't know. That's just my feeling of being there. I'm a first-time councillor. I may be wrong, but I'm really struggling a little bit of what benefit I bring as a councillor to some of that discussion. Unless I did bring back the eel thing back, that we haven't got the eels we used to have in the Lake Taupo, or the tuna.
And that was one discussion I brought back from that. But other than that, I'm pretty limited what I bring back. Yeah.
Good, thank you, Councillor Cookson, Councillor Kneebone and Chair Hughes. I might just make a couple of comments on the matters that you've raised so far. Just with regard to making sure that our joint management agreements are effective, and this is a point that you raised, Chair. It's a good point, and the process of review of our agreements is certainly intended to identify areas for improvement. And so if there are obligations that we're not meeting, either because they're no longer a priority, or building on Councillor Kneebone's point about, I guess, making sure that, you know, our current aspirations are reflected in those documents. It's certainly a key objective that is at the forefront as we go through the review of these documents. So watch the space. We'll continue to give you an update on how that's going, either through this process of reporting to Finance and Services on the Te Ara Tupu dashboard in this particular measure, or through our co-governance hui themselves, and/or it's a both option there. And just on, I guess, your experience with regard to the co-governance committee with Te Kotahitanga o Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Opua Kanapanapa. That particular committee is relatively new. And so when compared to other co-governance groups that we've had in place for a decade, it's still going through the process of really establishing, you know, that its key objectives. And so for the first 2 years, it's certainly been focused on more setting a strategic direction through Kaupapa Kaitiaki, which is the document that has recently been developed and approved. But certainly what we would expect to see over the next period of time, the coming years, is a shift in focus to more implementation activities. And so, yeah, as the maturity grows, I think we'll expect to see a situation where there will be an expectation from Waikato Regional Council to start, I guess, doing things. Yeah, but good insight that you're providing. Thank you.
Thanks, Marley. Mikhail.
Yeah, Marley, I'd just endorse what Stu and Rob said. You know, the ones that I'm involved with, the Te Ara and Ngāti Tūwharetoa. Again, speaking with the chairs and stuff like that, I just feel they are clinical and probably more Waikato Regional Council orientated, what's on the agenda. And yeah, I think they're a little bit lost on what they should be bringing to the meeting as well. And I'd like to see things done rather than just get tied up in the costs, you know, of that costs us to go down there and procedure. So yeah, and then again, you know, how long does the tenature have to last? You know, like look at Ngāti Tūwhare Trust and Waikato Regional Council was to do with the government and the nitrogen and stuff like that, Lake Taupo and stuff like that. So when does that kind of wrap up in the end, that we just feel as though the JMA is not achieving anything for both parties? You know, does that have an end time on any of these, or is it, you know, how long's the tenature, you know, if we're not achieving anything?
The joint management agreements do not have an end date, but they do have review dates. And just by the conversation that we've had so far this morning on this topic, review dates are clearly really important, because that brings about the opportunity for both parties to take a close look at what we're doing together and I guess identify how we might do things better going forward. So I think that you've all really quickly really landed on the key nub of where we are at in our, I guess, journey together under these agreements. And that is that it's probably, and what I haven't articulated yet is, I guess, the benefit that has been brought about by the joint management agreements, because they really have, I guess, provided that platform for partnership, for relationships. And we've been working in this manner for, 10 years, but clearly it is time for a bit of a refresh.
Thanks, Māori.
Can I
Councillor
just
Smith?
ask a question? Is it something that should be referred to the policy area rather than finance and services? Just because this seems to be a bigger picture.
It's actually a good point. I was just thinking myself that maybe we need to have a discussion about, is there a better way of delivering this communication, this partnership arrangement? Because at the moment it seems we've got pockets of people that in some cases are well informed, others not so well informed. And maybe if we treat them more as a much like we do with Anson, in a collegial way, with people being able to sit around the table as a group rather than standalone JMA representation, maybe we can move forward with education and also with issues that are not unique, because I'm sure the issues will be spread across the region rather than just unique to each party. Whether we do need to have that discussion, and maybe it does start at the policy end. Just my thoughts. I don't know whether anybody else has got any thoughts on the issue. Anyway, we can. Sorry, Stu.
I'm assuming, my assumption has always been, I should say, that the outputs of this process do get directed to the right department of council. In other words, it's not just us getting the stuff, even though it sits under the reporting to finance, the actual things that we can do to address them go to the right places. Yeah.
Yeah, just on decision-making process related to the JMAs, first and foremost, it is the relevant co-governance group that have a view and influence on what goes into the agreement. But because, of course, it is council that needs to be part of that agreement, council is the pathway to develop up any amendments or improvements or changes.
Yep.
And so we'll certainly continue to do that as we go through the process.
Okay. Thanks, Marley. Emma, is there anything else that you'd like to?
No, I was just going to give a little wrap up on where we're at with Council Mark now, which is 2-day assessment completed, which all of you participated in. And we've had some follow-up questions from the assessors, and we should have the draft report really soon. They haven't given us a date, but they have got most of their follow-up questions and information back. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we will have a draft report, which we should then be able to have a bit of a right of reply to. And the last one was our innovation portal, which is all in the report. So you've seen the 3 top innovations that have come out for the last month, which kind of just a good news story. And these will be reporting into Te Ara Tupu in the next month or so, so before the end of the year.
Very good. Thank you very much. No further questions for Emma. If not, I would like to, there's a resolution up there. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you. Stu, second. All in favour? Thank you. So I'd like to thank Marley and Emma for your contribution to the meeting. Thanks. That then takes us on to agenda item number 8, Project Reboot. Janine, you must be getting to the end of this.
Well, we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess, yes, in light of the fact that the formal Project Reboot project has wound down, and we've provided a high-level overview in terms of where the project is expected to land financially. So the good news being under the project budget, exclusive of contingency, by about 640,000, but also under the contingency by a further 1.1 million. I think it's fair to say that the reality of such a significant change within the organisation in terms of the key technology and systems that support a number of our core business processes will take some time to bed in and to be able to really extract the benefit that is anticipated from the solution across our activities. And I think that was highlighted in the independent quality assurance review that was undertaken in November 2022, which recommended keeping in place support post-project closure for a period of 12 to 18 months to support that transition into the business. So to that effect, I guess the request that's in front of the committee and for recommendation to council is the ability to retain the unspent project budget plus 50% of the unspent project contingency to allow that embedding of the system and associated business practices into the organisation, and also to continue, I guess, the hunt for process improvements, leveraging extensions to reporting and analytic capability and the like. The intent would be that if council was of a mind to do that, that funding would be overseen by myself to make sure that it's targeted in the right places to be able to achieve the outcomes that are sought. So that's sort of the request in a nutshell.
Thank you for that, Janine. I just a couple of questions. I'm happy to support this recommendation by staff, but I would like to see some way, and I don't know how feasible it is, for a measurement of the effectiveness and savings which are being generated by the new systems as in support of these requests for additional spend.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the reasons why you want this extra money, but there doesn't appear to be any transparency in terms of the benefits that are being delivered by Project Reboot. I know that's a big question, and I don't know whether it's feasible for that information to actually be supplied. And the second part of my question is, I understand there's some business analytics as part of the these systems that you have now. Is it possible for this committee to be privy to the information that's coming out of those business analytics so we can see just what the system, its capabilities are and what it can deliver?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, on the first point in terms of the measurement of effectiveness and savings, I guess that is the benefits realisation picture and what was put up in terms of the original business case.
Yep.
And how we're tracking to that. So as part of the project closure, I would absolutely expect to be reporting back either through this committee or through risk and assurance in terms of going, where are we at with that benefit realisation, acknowledging that not all of it was cash savings, some of it was capacity released, and also just better quality information, but being able to report that back to you in terms of where we are at now. And part of the process of project closure is handing back that responsibility for realising benefits on an ongoing basis to the business owners across the solution set. So that's both within finance, it's within the asset management space, it's within our people and capability teams. And I think having this money available is not just about the financial end of the spectrum, but it's actually the whole solution set to make sure that that's really working as we anticipated it would, and that the integration of that data is, providing us that greater richness of insight into business performance as well.
So can I take it from that the benefits of this should also flow through to the catchment, integrated catchment group? So that's
Yeah,
as well.
certainly the key area of cash releasing benefits that was anticipated from the project was in relation to the asset management space of being able to move from reactive maintenance to proactive maintenance. And we're seeing aspects of that coming through now, particularly with some of the staff that have gone into those spaces probably in the last 3 years and doing, the asset inspections that are going. Now we understand what the asset looks like. We're not having to maintain, replace it as quickly, or we can actually do better planning around those activities. So definitely that is an area of probably the primary benefit from a cash releasing perspective.
Have any other questions for Janine? If not, we have a resolution. Move for that, please. Happy to do that. Thanks. Thank you, Mikhail. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. All right. Thank you, Janine, for that. And Haven. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, sorry, if you want.
Okay. Thanks, Haven. We've got another external guest, so Janine's just going to go and talk to him. Be up next. Welcome, Haven.
Morning, Chair. Morning, councillors. So this is the regular non-financial performance results report, for information report. You will be familiar with it from previous quarters. I'll just speak to it at quite a high level. You can note there that we've got, of the 51 LTP performance measures, 12 we're still awaiting data for, then 33 are on track at 85%, 2 to be monitored, and 4 are off track. So I guess just to focus in on those ones that are off track a bit, the first one being on page 31 of your agenda, is around the number of groups that are funded through the Natural Heritage Partnership. So this is one that we are forecasting to be not achieved primarily because the funds allocated and there's not much space to bring on any new participants. The next one down there is around bus stops and meeting those in accordance with the timetable. So that's the one that we've struggled with historically since it's been in the LTP. And I know the team are having a good look and a good think around this one going forward, considering whether they still want to achieve that target, but maybe give them a bit more time to build up to that over future years of the LTP. The next one down is around developing the freshwater accounting framework. So it does note that underlying work has been done in that area. However, the team don't believe they'll have that finalised framework and completed by the end of the financial year. And then that last one down there is another one that we've struggled to meet since it's been put into the LTP. And that's primarily to do with how the scoring is weighted quite highly if there's a low score. So it kind of pulls it down. Again, the team's having a good think about what that might look like going forward and how to potentially reframe that one. So yeah, that's the report and happy to take any questions or discussion.
Thanks, Haven. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Haven, the community groups funded through the Natural Heritage Partnership Program, but just couldn't quite work out, is that groups that are not complying with their funding agreements, or is a metric we set in terms of how many groups we'd support?
It's a number of applicants that we support, the second one there.
Yeah, okay. So that's one we need to look at, because we haven't increased the budget for a long time. Whether we do or we don't is a decision, but to have it linked to that seems a bit weird to me. Because if we have 50 people wanting little amounts, and we might pass it. If we have 10 people wanting big amounts, and we might not pass it.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. I just note, I guess all of these performance measures are up for review as part of the long-term plan And I think it is all of those lessons that we need to reflect into the setting of measures going forward, but also what is it that we want to drive
Yeah,
from
exactly.
that
Yeah,
funding?
yeah. It's not
Is it
number of-
around the number of community groups, or is it actually achieving outcomes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the results that count.
Yeah.
Not the numbers. There's no further questions of Haven. Resolution, as per there, we have a mover, please. Yep, thanks, Stu. And Carl will second it. No, thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Haven, thank you very much for your presentation. Let you go and have a rest for the day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers. Brian. I think we're just about on spot on time for you. So welcome to the meeting. And thank you for taking the time and effort of coming down to Hamilton, fighting the Auckland traffic. I hope you use the train.
Brian, we'll just get you to turn the microphone to get a red light. If you push the right-hand
side
button.
one. Yep.
There you go.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yep.
And you might need to get the microphone close to your mouth. Just pull it.
There we are.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
All good. Thank you very much. So we'll probably take the paper as read this time, and really I'll give you a bit of update on where the markets are. But I think the most important thing is giving you comfort that during the transition, we're here to make sure things run smoothly. So I've already reached out to Janine, and we'll work closely with staff to ensure that you get whatever you need during the transition. But just looking briefly at the markets on page 1 there, which is our usual bar chart. It's quite an interesting one this time. You'll probably remember that we've seen a few over the years where everything's been strongly positive, and we sort of warned, well, it can't carry on, and then we saw a few that were quite heavily negative, and here we've got a tale of two worlds. But really the thing that's quite interesting to see here is on the left hand side, those light blue bars. That's the 1-year return in your growth assets. So that's the growth assets classes around the world doing fairly well over a 1-year period. However, the dark blue is the last quarter. So you can see it's a bit of a turnaround in that story, and the last quarter has been quite a tough time in markets. And really what that is it's the markets playing out as the Fed and other central banks navigate this inflationary environment. Our central view is that the Fed and other central banks have done fairly well to navigate towards this sort of soft landing, so to speak. You'll probably remember that we joked about the fact that the Fed in particular would probably just redefine what soft landing means after the fact. But what it really means is that soft landing is, can they bring inflation under control without a significant economic recession? And it seems that that's more and more likely. Now, of course, other events may crop up, but as the monetary policy is currently playing out, it feels like we should navigate towards a fairly soft landing. There will most likely be technical recessions, minor recessions along the way, but it's really about whether that economic impact is felt. Just looking at the next page, which is the fund performance. Of course, a tough time in the markets, that I said, with over the quarter, the market's been down negative 1.5%, and the fund down a little worse at negative 2.4%. And that's predominantly driven by that global equity allocation within Stewart Investors. As we've talked about in the past, Stewart Investors being a long-term focused manager, with a sustainable foundation, they don't really monitor what's going on in markets as much as what's going on in the companies that they hold and they believe will stand the test of time. So it's quite a normal part of having a manager like that, which is, there can be what we call tracking error, which is essentially a deviation in their returns from the underlying benchmark, but that tends to wash out over time. And the positive story there, and certainly given the context, is it made me think about the longer term. But looking at the 10-year number at 0.5% over benchmark, it's always important to remember what that actually means in value. And with the impact of compounding. It seems like a small number on the page, but that's $5 million in value added in a portfolio of this size over a decade. You know, and that's, I think the council can be quite proud of how those managers have played out over that period. I might pause for questions. The rest really is manager focused. So I'd rather see if you have any questions around the transition or anything else.
Anybody around the table? I've been through it in detail, as I tend to do on these things, and you have my sympathies that last. It's not a very nice time to be bowing out of a portfolio when you're delivering these sort of results. And I guess I'd just like to thank you, and I know Janine would as well, for the time and effort you put into it. We have to look at this as a long-term, minimum of 10 years. I think it does an injustice to look at it on a 3-monthly basis, and we've got a responsibility to monitor performance, but we shouldn't be making comments on a period which is it's an aberration in terms of what the fund's delivered over a long period of time. So I don't have anything further to say apart from thanking you very much, and also for the spirit of cooperation expressed in terms of the handover to the new managers. So if there's no other questions, we have a resolution there at the Mercer Investment Monitoring Report to 30 September be received. Thanks, Mikhail. Thanks, Stuart. All in favour? Aye.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good to see
Brian,
you.
thanks very much for coming and presenting. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, so next agenda item we'll push in before.
Right.
Is that all right? Are you happy with that?
Absolutely.
So Janine, Treasury Management and Monitoring Report, which is on page 64 of your agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess this, to a large extent, replicates the information that is included within the Mercer report. But I guess just some other additional information that's included. The investment equalisation reserve there is reported as at the 30th of September. And obviously, as well as the negative fund return that's reported for the first quarter of the year, we've also still got these headwinds of high inflation that we're needing to provide for in terms of setting money aside for the intergenerational equity of the fund. So the position at the end of September is that reserve is in deficit by about $12.3 million. Now we have a workshop this afternoon in terms of the future of the investment fund and how that's going to be managed. And part of that consideration is addressing the deficit in this reserve. But I think the advice is noted for that workshop is based on the reserve position at the 1st of July 2023. Our current SIPO does set some thresholds for when council may wish to consider ceasing distributions from the investment fund, and clearly at the level that we're at now, that has been triggered. So I guess it's for consideration by the committee around interventions that it may wish to take now, or whether you wish to have another look at that once we've actually completed the workshop with Mikhail this afternoon in relation to the future of the investment fund. Effectively, what that intervention would be at this point in time would be that we would not take the current year's rate subsidy from the fund. So that's just over $2 million. The implication of that for the organisation would be that we need to find $2 million of savings somewhere to offset that. That's at its fullest extent. There is also obviously a halfway house that we reduce the amount of rate subsidy that is taken rather than taking the full amount. But likewise, the organisation would then need to find savings to offset that.
So you're saying in that scenario you just outlined, we'd we'd further deplete the reserve.
No, so if we didn't take the rate subsidy, that would leave would put $2 million back into the reserve. So the deficit would be.
Yeah, but then I think I thought I heard you outline a second scenario where we'd only
To go halfway.
which
Yeah.
means we would increase the negative.
It would be an improvement on the position that's reported at
Yeah.
the moment to the 30th of September.
Yeah.
So that position at the 30th of September reflects the full drawdown of the annual plan income rate subsidy of $2 million. So if we only took half of that, the deficit would be 11 million rather than 12. Yeah. So there are a range of interventions that could be taken. Well, a range of interventions. Effectively, it's either we take the rate subsidy, we take some of it, or we don't take any of it, with the implication of that being that the organisation needs to find savings for that. One of the positive headwinds that I think we do have within our budget, which is probably, potentially an appropriate offset, would be the favourable and working capital interest that we're able to achieve versus what we budgeted. So that would offset in part, at least, any reduction in drawdowns from the reserve. Maybe pause there and take.
Thank you, Janine. I'm probably being flippant, but I'd like to see the savings as well as the contribution, but that's just me being greedy. So yes, it is a difficult one. What I'm suggesting is that we should leave this discussion until we've listened to the Macau presentation this afternoon, because I don't think things are as gloomy as they possibly could be, but there's absolutely no way we can predict the future. I think we need to listen to the experts that we're paying to give us that advice. But it does mean that we're really going to have to tighten down on the funds that are going external, that are being given from generation of profits from the investment fund, if we're to preserve the legacy of that fund going forward, which I believe we've all got a commitment to. So I'd just like to park this until we've had the discussion this afternoon. Thanks, Stu. So, Janine, can I thank you for your report? Is there any other comments you would like to make? If not, got a resolution. Treasury Management Monitoring Report through September be received. Thank you, Stu. Second from Robbie. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that takes us to, next item on the agenda. Happy, if people would like a break now, I'm happy to take a break, or if you would like to go to the next agenda item. Yes, we will. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, look, absolutely before 12. So.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
people
then
like a break now, or you want to carry on?
I'm easy, whatever you want to do, Mr. Chairman.
Carry on. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, my brain is ticking along just through that last item. So it's a workshop this afternoon. When does that come back for us to make a decision? Does that go into full council, back into finance committee to, whether we use 2 million to rate subsidy, or, when's the decision happened with that? If it's not now.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think that would normally be a recommendation from this committee to council, in terms of the terms of reference for this committee being both monitoring of the investment fund and its performance and impacts, but also then I guess the financial performance of the organisation and forecasts there as well. So because it'll all come together with that, but it's always a recommendation to council.
So, Michaela, are you going to be available for that meeting this afternoon or not? You are, okay. So will it be possible for us to make that decision after the meeting this afternoon or not?
And,
yeah.
So Otherwise, how are we gonna need to
So-
make the decision before the next formal opportunity is going to arrive?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, I think we can take some direction from the workshop this afternoon probably. And that can then be an input into the second quarter forecast that we will do, so we can actually book, notionally reflect whatever the direction from council is around a reduction and drawdown or wherever it may land. And then we can look for those offsetting savings through the forecast process as well. And that can come back as part of that forecast recommendation to the first committee meeting in the new year. I don't think it's of immediate urgency
Yeah. Okay.
now.
If it was,
it's a good signal to
convene a
send.
special meeting for 10
Yeah.
minutes before a council
Yeah.
meeting.
It's really for rates purposes, isn't it? Rate setting.
Yeah.
So we've got time up our sleeve
Yeah.
on our side.
Yeah.
Mr. I was looking at asking a supplementary question there, if I may. Is it something that's within the terms of reference of this committee to make that decision without reference to council? And if it is, that's fine. But like this afternoon, councillors haven't been given notice that that might be part of the guidance being sought. So I'm just feel concerned that a wider group might want to have input. Don't know what the answer will be, but I just wanted to make sure that those who would like to have a say would have that opportunity.
So through you, Mr. Chair, certainly I'm happy to highlight through the workshop today, and I think the paper, which is an all of council workshop, so the paper that's been submitted for that explains what the assumption is around the starting reserve deficit, which was the position as at the 30th of June last year. So I think it's relevant in the conversations to reflect actually where we're at the end of the first quarter, because I think that provides a currency to the conversations and guidance that will be provided through the workshop this afternoon. And then depending on where that lands, can certainly be something that we can bring back, as I say, through the first quarter forecast, which comes through this committee, but is always a recommendation to council anyway.
You've got a question? Sorry. Right, thank you. Next one. Okay, sorry. Righto, agenda item number 12, rates information to 30th of October. And Janine, once again, has the pleasure of presenting for us.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Page
Chair.
74 of your agenda notes.
So hopefully just a very quick notation on this report. I will take it as read, really just signalling that is at the end of October, which is obviously the due date for our rates where they are paid in full for the year. We had achieved a 73% collection in terms of current year rates, which is in line with the previous financial year where collection was 74%. Similarly, in terms of if we take into account across current year rates, both those paid in full as well as those under payment arrangement over the rest of the year, remissions and other adjustments, the total value without any payment arrangement at this point in time is 18%, which again is in line with the previous financial year at 17%. We've provided an overview in terms of the value of rates remissions that have been granted for this financial year compared to last. Just noting that in relation to the hardship remission, those will be assessed over the course of the year as they come through, and in some cases will be determined at the end of the year once we have confirmation that the account has been paid in full. Information is provided there in terms of rates arrears for all previous years of 6.033 million. Is at the 30th of June, that has reduced to just over $5 million as at the end of October 2023. Those are probably the key points to highlight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Janine. Can I just ask, that there's a couple of points. Are we taking active action against the 5 million that's still outstanding from previous rates arrears?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So we have 2 staff within our rates team that are dedicated to follow up and collection action of all sorts. So letters, reminders, phone calls, legal action, mortgagee demands, the range of tools that are available to us.
So, and are you comfortable that that we're addressing that in an effective manner? It's a lot of money to have outstanding effectively in your bad debts column. And the next point is, see, we've lost another 283,000, which have gone into statute barred. Do we have a process in place which captures items before it gets statute barred, so we can take the appropriate action, recovery action? Because once it's gone, it's gone. Well, is it forever? And I respect the fact that in some cases it's not worth the effort. But we did take an unfortunate case to the ultimate position of selling up recently, and that doesn't give me any pleasure whatsoever. And I just want to make sure that we're taking whatever action we can before we get to that point.
Yes, and so in relation to statute barred, those are accounts where we have not been able to take any collection action, which may be contact details for the owners are unreliable. We're actually not able to identify who they are for various reasons, and so we have that 6-year period to start collection action. I think if we compare the 283,000 to the actual value of the rates that we assess, it is a comparatively small amount. So I think by and large the team do a really good job of following up on payment of rates accounts, but in a manner that sort of respects the situation of the individual ratepayer as well, but ultimately with collection outcomes in mind.
Yeah, I was reminded recently that we are effectively hold the mortgage on these properties. We've got the ultimate power to collect, so there's no reason why we shouldn't. So, Stuart.
Just that one you just mentioned that we dealt with last time, but I certainly thought we're not in public excluded. So I was going to get an update on what had happened, that one in Huntly. But are we, is that
Janine will probably give you an update offline on that one. Thanks. She did, Janine did talk to us about it before we went into meeting. So has anybody else got any questions on the rates information? If not, we have a resolution. Can I have a mover, please? Carl, Stu, seconder. In favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So we go to agenda item number 13, which I requested be put on the agenda. So, Janine, you can explain this beautiful topic of burden. Robbie will be most interested in this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought you might have wanted to take a break before this.
Oh, yes, that's okay. We should have a break now before we go to this one. So the people want a 5-minute break, just get a cup of coffee. I wouldn't mind. Okay, thank you, Janine. What a great idea.